Hey there, I am Brian Goulet of GouletPens.com here for the 65th episode of Goulet Q&A, the laid back, chill time kind of podcast, video, whatever you want to call it, where I will just chill and talk about pen stuff. So I've got a bunch of questions from you this week. I got like 17 of them that I got so many good questions. I'm going to try to answer as many as I can today. I will kind of say before I get all into it, well, first off, the date, okay, is February 6th. I forgot to mention that. I can't believe January's gone. What the heck happened in January? I don't even know. But I will say I'm a little under the weather, so if you hear me coughing a little bit, I'm sorry, especially to you podcast listeners. I got some cough drops here. You know, I've got a thing of water. So I'm going to be a trooper and try and get through it, but just, you know, bear with me whenever I talk like this for a long period of time. It can tend to make me want to cough. I'm a little sniffly and stuff like that. Anyway, I'm still going to do it though. So some of the stuff that I've been up to in the last week or so, just kind of company things got going on. We did a blog post on Tuesday called Written from the Heart. Really cool. I'm super proud of that because I actually didn't have all that much to do with it. My media team here really kind of took that and ran with it. Mike is my media manager. Jenny and Sarah, videographer and photographer respectively. They're a very creative bunch. They came up with that blog post and really did a great job with it. We've really had a lot of cool stuff going on with our media team. I will be talking about that more. We got more joining that team here shortly. So I was thinking maybe we'll do like an introduction. I'll kind of introduce you to maybe some of them in the future. Maybe not in a Q&A. I don't know. We haven't really hashed that out yet, but I just want to give a shout out and recognize that some of the really good content that we've been putting out lately has not just been me, and that's been very intentional. There's a lot of creativity, a lot of skills that I don't have, and I'm just really having fun seeing what they're coming up with. I'm still going to keep doing my thing. You know, I got my pen thing and the Q&As and stuff like that, but they're doing a lot of neat stuff, so look for more of that. Monday Matchups is a perfect example. Those have really been coming into their own. Mike's been helping to write some of the copy for those and just been getting more creative. We're going to be more intentional about the creativity of those. What's in my bag on Instagram, that's something we've been doing that's really cool. Rachel did hers, I did mine, which, you know, not to brag, but my What's in my bag is our top liked Instagram post that we've ever done, which is really kind of cool. And you see how much stuff I literally have in my bag. There were a couple of things in there that I kind of added in that I don't necessarily carry with me every day. But in general, you know, this backpack that I carry around, there's a lot of stuff in there. And it's no joke. It's pretty heavy. It's like 15, 20 pounds, something like that. I don't know. I like to be prepared. I carry a lot of stuff with me. You know, I'm a big guy. I can carry a big backpack. It's not a big deal. So that's really cool. A couple of product things to talk about. The Leuchtturm neon notebooks that we have in 4 different colors are discontinued. They're not going to be available anymore. We have a few of them left, but not a ton, so they're on our closeout. They're not discounted or anything, but all that we have is all that we're going to have because Leuchtturm has changed distributors in the US. The new distributor is not going to be carrying those anymore. They were a special edition, so they weren't meant to be forever. So I think they've just kind of run out of that stock, and with the transition of the distributorship, the old distributor cleared them all out. The new one did not take them on. However, the new distributor is going to be bringing in a bunch more stuff. They're bringing the Jot books back, you know, the little floppy, you know, paperback things. And they're bringing in a lot more colors in the Leuchtturm notebooks, and they're bringing in a dot grid in all the colors. I'm super excited about that because we really wanted more dots. So there's going to be some cool stuff coming out from Leuchtturm. We're going to have to go easy so we don't overwhelm everybody and overwhelm ourselves. So look for some neat stuff coming from Leuchtturm in the next coming months. You might have heard Lamy All-Star is the special edition is coming out in copper orange, which, you know, I just happen to have right here. I'll talk about that in a second. And then the All-Star in black, which was a special edition last year, is coming back as a regular edition. I'm super happy about that because we fought for that hard and it came back. So that's really cool. And then, let's see here, the neon green is going to be the safari color for 2015. I don't know what that's going to look like. They just did apple green. They've done a bunch of neons and stuff. So, you know, I would love to have seen a purple. I'm still telling them every chance I get, bring a purple, bring a purple, bring a purple. But we got neon green. So that will be coming a little bit later, probably like you know, a couple months from now. But anyway, we have had some. Oh, we also got in the Parker Urban and IM Premiums. I did a video on the IM Premium last week, couple weeks or whatever. And then I'm going to have one, I've already recorded the Urban Premium. We're working on that now. We'll have that out within the next week or so. So that'll be kind of neat. Just be a quick look just to kind of show you what that's all about. We've had some bug fixes on our site, some pretty decent ones. For one thing, we have faceted search on mobile now. So now on our mobile site, it's not just a bunch of random products that you have to scroll through forever. You can actually go and hit the refine button on mobile, and then you can actually select some of your criteria. We're definitely still tweaking it and stuff like that, but that's a huge step in the right direction. Also, search results page 2 is now working. It used to be where anything you searched for on our site, you know, you'd have your first page, and then when you click onto the second page, it would just be randomness. It wouldn't actually be continuing the search onto the second page. So that is continuing on. There's all kinds of other little bug fixes that you may notice, but things are happening. We are working on stuff. There's also a lot of fixes that have happened kind of behind the scenes that you may not notice, but are making our lives a lot easier as far as processing orders and helping you on the phone and stuff like that. So we're getting a lot of wins. We're starting to kind of turn the corner on some of the website bugs. You know, there are some things that as we fix things, other things will break, and it takes a little time to tweak them, but Mozu has been very responsive. That's who hosts our website. And one thing I can say that's also kind of more of a moving in a positive direction as far as our site goes is we just heard that Volusion, which is the company that owns Mozu, and it's all kind of one parent company, they just secured $55 million of venture capital that they're going to basically put towards building Mozu faster. So part of the reason that our site has not been fixed for some of these bugs quicker is because literally it's a whole new platform, all new code, and they only have so many developers that know this code. So they need to hire more developers, so they secured this capital so they could get more developers in there and make things start to happen faster. I think there's 9 stores that have launched on the platform now. We were number 4. You know, Jelly Belly was the next one that launched after us. So we're like, well, that's kind of cool. And we heard that there's a clothing retailer, an online clothing retailer that sells about $100 million a year that's going to launch on that platform later this year. So we're kind of running with the big guns here a little bit. So, you know, we're just... you know, I would say that we're a small fish in a big pond, but we've been told by Mozu that we're not a small fish, we're a baby whale. So that's kind of neat. So we're definitely like one of the smaller companies for sure on this new platform, but we have a very active community, a lot going on, a lot of traffic to our site. People spend a lot of time on our site. We have a very kind of vibrant, robust site for the volume that we do. So that's part of why we were early adopters on this platform. So it'll be really neat to see some of the stuff that can come out of our site in the coming year. And then the last thing, before I get all into the questions, I promise I will get to answering questions. I'm trying out just a little tweak of the format here in Q&A. It just happened very naturally that as I was assembling the questions last night to put together this morning, I'm going to cough. Give me a second. There we go. As I was assembling the questions last night, it just so happened that they kind of fit into these nice little buckets, you know. So I'm going to try just packaging them together a little bit, you know, having a little bit of a sequence, so that way some of the more related questions will stick together. So I've got like a couple of new product questions, I've got some questions on pens and writing, I've got some on ink, got one on business, and I got some troubleshooting stuff. So I'm going to try, you know, just kind of lumping them together a little bit, and we'll see how the flow goes. I am absolutely open to feedback about this. If you don't like the format, it's not a drastic change, honestly, but if you don't like the way that it flows, tell me in the comments on YouTube or on the blog. Tell me you don't like it. The stronger the language, the better. That way I know, not anything belligerent, please, but, you know, just be honest about, you know, if you like the format. I do these things not just as therapy for myself, that's probably definitely some of it, but I do it for you. So, you know, you're asking me questions. I never know what I'm going to get every week, so it's hard to say like this is the exact format it'll be, but I just thought I would try out, you know, assembling in a little bit more of a fashion, I don't know. So we'll just see how it goes. The one thing that was really cool is last week, I got a lot of feedback in the question of the week about, you know, what is your Q&A watching ritual? It was really cool. If you go back to episode 64, read through some of the comments, especially on YouTube and in the blog, honestly, got a lot of good comments about just what people are doing. People are painting their nails, they're practicing calligraphy, snuggling with their dog, and just kind of relaxing as they go to sleep, or waking up early and having coffee on Saturday. You know, it's really cool to see how I'm kind of fitting into your routine, and I really take that to heart, which makes it like, even when I'm sick like this, I want to produce a Q&A for you because I want to be a part of your life. I want to be able to enhance your writing experience, just your relaxing time. And it was so cool to see, like, so much of the feedback was, you know, hey, I like to watch you as I'm kind of relaxing, winding down from my week, all that stuff. That's really cool to me because I definitely have more of a kind of a chill vibe. I know I get a little amped up when I do the Q&As sometimes, but you know, I'm a really kind of a laid back, just down to earth guy, and I like to be involved in your world like that. So I honor that, I respect that, and just I'm appreciative of the attention that you're paying to me. So that's really cool. So that said, I will actually get to some questions now. So I got a whole bunch of them, so I'm going to try to be pretty concise. I've planned them all out and made bullet points, and so I'll try to kind of roll through them pretty good. Okay, so the first one I've got is new products, okay? And Jenny I haven't even run this by Jenny, this new little format thing. So Jenny cuts all my videos together and stuff like that. So I'm going to see if maybe she wants to throw a lower third or something and just do a little new products, you know, wow, banner or something, lower down here, I don't know. I have fun with that, Jenny. Okay, first question I have is from Lori P on Facebook. When will the Lamy Orange Al-star arrive? Well, it's called Copper Orange. I should have edited that before I answered the question, but here it is. It's not actually here yet. I don't have them to sell, so don't get too excited. But it's here. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in as I'm talking a little bit just because I have it handy. So it's the Copper Orange is the color, and it honestly looks fantastic. I am thrilled because normally the All-Stars are pretty... they're pretty muted, pretty neutral in color, and this one is quite vibrant. The ocean blue is the All-Star that really kind of pops in color. All the rest of them are really just pretty, you know, plain. The last really exciting one that I think they had was the ruby red. That was awesome, but this Copper Orange it pops. I just love it. And being a Virginia Tech grad, it's definitely like this burnt orange color. It's fantastic. And I have a pair of sunglasses that actually exactly matches this color, which is kind of cool. So this is a sample that I have only for a few days. I will be shooting a video on it, and then I will, you know, have that. I'll compare it to some other colors, give you some ink, you know, options that you can use with it. I haven't played with it much. I just got it. We've been photographing it. I'm going to shoot a video on it. That will be coming out in early March, like right at the beginning of March. I don't have an exact date yet. I know Lamy's a worldwide brand. Usually you know, the European retailers get it a little bit ahead of us, but honestly, by the time it ships and stuff like that, it's not going to be much earlier that you would get it, if anything, from when we'd have it in the US. So, you know, I know you want to get all excited and think all that stuff, but if you can wait just like a little bit, we'll have it and be able to do the whole thing. So, you know, just hang on there, and then we'll also be getting the matte black, I just guess it's just called black, but this is the color that we had last year as a special edition. And the way that these special editions work, they're usually out for maybe a year at the most. It depends on how big a run they do, how popular it is, how quickly they sell out. It can really vary. But the black ones were really popular, really popular, and I'm super thrilled that they brought that back. The black one is a regular pen, so that's really exciting. So that is all I have to say about that, as Forrest Gump would say. Sam S. on Facebook, the second question. Any information on when the TWSBI Vac Mini will come to market? Even a year guess would be appreciated. Okay, yes. So TWSBI, love them. They do a lot of exciting stuff. The one issue that some people bring about with the way they do things is they post prototypes like way ahead of time, and then it usually just takes a long time before stuff actually comes into production. Honestly, you know, I have no fault for how TWSBI does that, because that's how it is for everybody. Stuff just takes a long time to develop, and then you run into issues and stuff like that. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. They're showing you stuff ahead of time of when other people would, so you're getting to see stuff like in early development. You're getting to influence some of the opinions and development and stuff like that, which is a really cool thing about TWSBI. The downside of that is you're seeing, kind of lifting the veil a little bit, you know, pulling back the curtain, if you will, of how much stuff actually goes wrong with products before they're actually brought to market. This happens all the time with all brands. You know, colors change, you know, they try to manufacture something and end up with all these quality issues of some kind. There's some component that doesn't work right, and they have to change things a lot before you end up with the final product. So you're getting to see a lot of that with TWSBI, and you know, this Vac Mini is a perfect example. The Vac 700 took like over 2 years from the time that they put it on their Facebook page before it actually came about, and the Vac Mini is probably approaching that at this point. So I believe pretty strongly that it's supposed to come out in 2015. The TWSBI Eco was supposed to be coming out late last year, and now it's been pushed back. And so all this stuff is going to happen. It's in the works, I promise. But at this point, I don't have any firmer a date than I had a year ago. But we're at the beginning of the year, so I'm hopeful it's going to be this year. But that's about all I know. All right. So next questions I have, I'm going to lump it into kind of the pens and writing category. Got a few questions about this, 4 of them to be exact. Lori Arrowood on YouTube said, "Hey Brian, I'm considering buying a Pilot Custom 74 from you. Love it, based on your love for it and my great experience with my Pilot Metropolitan. I have a medium nib in my Metro and love that size, Metropolitan, Pilot Metropolitan, for those of you not familiar with that term. When I looked at the Nib Nook and compared the steel medium of the Metro to the gold medium of the Custom 74, I noticed the 74 is slightly thicker. I'm assuming that's because it's a gold nib and it's softer. So would I be better off getting a fine nib in the Custom 74 to get the same line as a medium on the Metro?" That is a great question. Really glad you asked that. It definitely brings about a little bit of conversation of steel nibs versus gold nibs. However, the softness of a gold nib can vary a little bit. Part of that is due to the carat weight of the gold, 14 versus 18 versus there's 21 in some brands, Sailor mainly. And then you have the design of the nib in general. You know, Platinum, for example, has 18 karat nibs that are harder than some stainless steel nibs that I know. It's how they design them. So in general, Pilot's gold nibs are fairly soft, a little bit springy. I don't like to use the word soft. I shouldn't say that, because soft, especially in Pilot, can mean flexible, actually. So it's not soft in terms of the soft Falcon, you know, for example. Those soft nibs will give you a decent bit of line variation. That's not what I mean when I say soft on this one, in the term you're using here, Lori. I would say springy is more the appropriate word to use. So it feels springy. So it's going to bend just a little bit, not enough to give line variation, but the gold is going to bend just a little bit as you're writing to kind of smooth out some of the bumps. It just gives a smoother feel while you're writing. Not smoothness in terms of the feedback, but smoothness in terms of the writing pressure. So it gives a different feel that's really hard for me to explain, but if you've used different types of pens, especially gold versus steel, you know that there can certainly be a difference sometimes in the feel of it. It's part of the reason I love the Pilot gold nib so much, is they have more of that kind of springy feel to it than some other brands do, like Platinum, for example. So this one in specific, you're talking about the same brand, Pilot, which, you know, pen nib grinds, gosh, sorry. I'm dying here. I told you this was going to happen, but I'm going to truck on anyway. Maybe I need to drink some water. I don't know how relaxed you're going to be on this one when you're coughing so much. All right, I'm getting there. Let me regroup. I'm like tearing up because I'm coughing. Okay. So the Custom 74, okay, when you got Pilot, any pen brand really, in general, their grinds tend to be fairly similar within the brand, but it can vary model to model. Goodness. So sorry. So sorry. Pens, nib grinds tend to be like women's clothing, right? You have a size 8 dress or whatever, but you got to try them all on because they could all be different from one brand to another. It's kind of how nibs are. That's why I have the Nib Nook tool that you talked about, Lori. I'm like trying to hold back coughs and I'm sounding like a weirdo. Sorry. So, in general, it's like that. I'm trying to like keep my train of thought here too. So in general, with the nib sizes too, you got to go like one pen model to another to see how they compare, which is why I'm so glad that we did the Nib Nook years ago. So the softness of the Custom 74 definitely accounts for some of the wider writing that you see. It's not in terms of a flex necessarily, but, excuse me. You guys are in pain right now watching me, I can tell. Okay, anyway. So, to summarize it, I might make this a shorter Q&A after all. To summarize it all, you probably want to get a fine custom 74, like I have here. A fine custom 74, if you write with any type of writing pressure, is going to write a little bit more closer to a medium steel Metropolitan. I have and love my medium custom 74. It's ground a little bit finer than some of the other pens, but in general, it's going to write just a little bit broader than the steel Pilot nibs. So, excuse me, if you have decent writing pressure, I would go with a fine. If you have a very light hand, go with the medium. That's my summary. I am dying. Okay. Next question. Donnie K on Facebook. What italic nib is the best balance of usability for everyday writing and noticeable flair? I believe mine is a 1.8 millimeter, but sometimes I wonder if it's not too big for daily use and note-taking. 1.8 is pretty broad. And that's also kind of a weird size. I don't carry anything that's a 1.8. I'm not going to say that there's nothing that could be a 1.8, but I don't think that's very common. So you may want to double check on what that actually is. But 1.8 is pretty broad, pretty wide, I mean. So I could definitely see how you would be running into some issues with taking notes, especially on smaller line rulings. If you have a 1.8, you really wouldn't be able to use anything smaller than probably a 8 millimeter ruling in general and still have it be kind of readable. So I would say a 1.1 is about what you would want. That tends to be like the most popular size. If you look at most pen brands that would have stub or italic nibs, they're going to have a 1.1 in there, pretty much. So for pens that do that, you know, most of the italics are fairly similar. Noticeable flair, they're all going to write somewhat similar. There'll be some subtle differences, but the ones I have, Lamy Conklin has got some decent ones. Monteverde Edison, and then Pilot in their custom 912, they have one that's a 1.0 actually, but it's fairly similar. That one is a little bit different than the others. It's a little narrower, a little sharper on the edges. Sorry. I'm actually going to pause this and come back, cough my brains out, and then start recording again. Hang in there. All right, I'm back. I apologize. Had to compose myself a little bit there. I might try talking just a little bit quieter, see if I can keep from completely dying on the air here. I might sound a little funny because I now have 3 cough drops in my mouth. We'll see if that helps. All right, next question I have is from Martin L on Facebook. It says, what are your favorite letters to write in cursive? Also, do you have any favorites while writing in block letters? Me personally, well, first of all, let me say the letter I hate the most in cursive is uppercase Q's. I refuse to write them, the ones that look like 2s in the Palmer method, which is how I was taught. I hate that letter, and I refuse to write it. So I just do a regular circle with a Q and kind of go about it like that. It's just something I do. I hate that number 2 thing. It just looks so weird to me. So my favorites, though, without a question, in order, I think, is an uppercase L. I just love the way that that flows. An uppercase D, that is also kind of similar to the L, but just with an extra little whoop, little swoop on there. And uppercase J's, I like those too. I like a lot of the uppercase letters. I like to make them big and bold and, you know, just do cool stuff with them. As far as my favorites writing in block letters, first off, I'm weird. I never, almost never, except when I'm signing my name, write in cursive with anything but a fountain pen. It's just a weird thing that I do. Whenever I'm writing with a ballpoint or rollerball or a pencil, I always write in print. But with a fountain pen, I always write in cursive. It's just, I think it's because I didn't get exposed to fountain pens until I was 25. And then as soon as I did, literally like as soon as I started writing with fountain pens, I was like, oh, this flows really nicely. I want to write in cursive now all of a sudden. And it was just like an instinctual thing for me. And then as soon as I went back to a ballpoint, I was like, as soon as I tried to write in cursive again with a ballpoint, I was like, this is just not a fountain pen. It's not the same experience. So for me, it's always kind of been just like, that's my separation. It's a weird thing, I know, and it's probably specific to me. Maybe some of you do that out there, but I always do fountain pen in cursive, and I always do ballpoint or rollerball in print. Not print necessarily, but yeah, print, sorry, not block. But you asked me about block here, Martin. I actually don't write in block lettering, so like the all uppercase stuff, I don't do that. To me, that's yelling. My dad writes that way. That's how he writes everything, and I've never done that. It's just weird to me. It's slow. I don't like it. So I don't know. And in general, writing in print, I don't have any favorite letters any more than any others, really. I like the uppercase G because I sign that with my name. You know, so you can do some cool stuff with that. If you look at like the GP logo that we have engraved on the Goulet nibs, like doing the with the big thing coming down, you know, that's kind of cool. But in general, I'm not very passionate about the letters that I write in print. It's the cursive ones that I think are cool. I think I might cough. Okay. Next question from Danielle F. on Facebook. Which pen would you recommend for a left-handed 10-year-old beginner? Whew. Couple of different variables, curveballs you're throwing at me there. You know, in general, you're talking about somebody who's 10, they're just maybe learning cursive, if that's even taught in school, at their school anymore. I don't think the beginner aspect has necessarily as much to do with it. I mean, at 10 years old, you should be old enough to be able to write with, you know, a normal pen. But you wouldn't want to get something super expensive just because they're 10 and they're not going to really know how to handle a really nice pen, but if you give them some supervision, sure. So in general, the left-handed aspect is more kind of what I'm going to focus on, and then for the 10-year-old, I'm going to focus a little bit on the more durable, lower price kind of ones. So there is a pen that's kind of made for kids called the Lamy ABC. I'm not crazy about that pen. It does not sell well at all. I don't even know why we carry it, honestly, but that's pretty good for kids. It uses the same nibs on any other Lamy, so you could really kind of use any Lamy, but that pen is more, you know, it's very plain, kind of looks like a kid's pen, but that might be a good one. Or the Lamy Safari, you know, there's a lot of good options. I would stick to maybe a fine nib size on the Lamy, because it's going to be fine enough where it's going to put down a kind of a fine line, so it would have less of a tendency for smearing, but also when you're writing left-handed, you're writing in a push motion, so if your nib is really fine, especially if you're holding the nib really upright, it can feel really scratchy and then become a problem that way. So maybe not go with the extra fine. That's why I say that. And the Safari, there's lots of fun colors. That's why it's a good for kids, and it's very durable. The Pilot Varsity would also be a good one. Very smooth nib. It's a medium nib, so maybe a little broader, but it's only a $3 pen. You could give it a shot. It's disposable. So if the kid doesn't like it, you haven't made a huge investment. So definitely that one. It's a good writer. Pilot Metropolitan, I'm a big fan of that pen. It's just a good writer. I would go with the medium size probably. The fine might be a little too fine, but you could try that. The Jinhao X750, it's kind of a heavy pen, so it's not one of my favorites, but it's inexpensive, and it's got a medium nib on it, so it's pretty smooth and would write okay in a push motion. All right, next grouping that I have here, after I cough, is ink. So I'm going to talk about some ink questions. So the first question I have is CorwynCelesil, forgive me for mispronouncing your name on YouTube. Is there any danger in having ink all over your fingers? I like this question. As for instance, licking peanut butter off of diamine grape-stained fingers, which has certainly never happened to me, no indeed. Are fountain pen inks toxic in any way? That's funny. I would like to say that I've never done anything like that either. Definitely not from handling pens all day long. I actually don't have any ink on my fingers right now. I feel a little naked. Haven't played with any pens this morning, but yeah, I would say that in general, it's not a great idea because inks are not non-toxic, right? So they are not, I believe to have something non-toxic, you have to get like special tests and certifications and stuff like that. So it is a bit of a question mark because I don't have MSDS sheets on all these inks. I don't know. They're definitely not made for consumption. They are not advertised safe for kids or non-toxic or anything like that. So there could very well be chemicals in there that are not going to be great for your body if they are consumed. I would never recommend consuming ink on any kind of a regular basis. By regular, I mean ever at all. However, If it's something on your fingers and you've washed your hands, there's not going to be much of that left on there. I don't think there's a high risk of anything, but I certainly don't condone, you know, licking peanut butter off your ink-stained fingers with much regularity. It's kind of a do it at your own risk kind of situation. I will say that there are like laws and stuff about what chemicals you can use and some of that stuff. And so as to how much those are up to date and all these things, how much chemicals might react certain ways, who the heck knows? There's all kinds of chemicals in our food that we eat anyway that are controversial. But I don't really have like specific information as to how good or bad it might be. I would just say use your own discretion, use your best judgment, and try in general not to do that. I guess that's a good indication for you, Jenny, about whenever I'm going to the next question as I seem to cough. Okay, DrewsheBag on YouTube is the next question. Any good suggestions for a quick drying permanent ink? Yep. Sorry, these are really harsh sounding coughs too. I'm really having to force them. So, a couple of good ones. Diatramentis document inks, which we almost never have in stock, but they are there. We're working on that. Rohrer and Klingner, I talked about that last week too, by the way, so you can go back to episode 64 and learn a little bit more about why we had trouble with the document inks. Rohrer and Klingner Salix and Scabiosa, they're not particularly a fast drying necessarily, but they're pretty good. They're definitely waterproof. Super 5 is similar in property to the Diatramentis document inks. They're pretty fast drying, very permanent. And then the last one I have is Platinum Carbon Black. I like that one a lot. Dries on all kinds of paper and is pretty quick drying. So those are all recommendations that I have for you. Flavio on the blog asks, kind of a long question, so I will read it. I have a question about Noodler's Black, aka Bulletproof. I don't know if you've already answered this earlier, so I'm sorry. I might have, and I can't even remember. It's a simple doubt. Do you know how permanent it is, not on paper, but on fabric, say on a cotton shirt? It seems the perfect ink for day-to-day use at work, but I tend to periodically stain my clothes and hands or whatever is around me. Regular inks disappear when I wash them, even with regular detergent. I'm afraid a permanent ink will result in permanent stains. Have you ever tested this? Have anyone? I'd love to hear in the comments some things you've had about ink stains and stuff like that. I'd love to get some feedback. I haven't really done a lot of permanent stains. Despite how much I handle my ink and pens and stuff, I'm pretty careful. And I've learned from past mistakes, having spilled things before, I always do it in a fairly controlled environment. So, me personally, it's not as much of an issue. Plus, in my workplace, we have like whole stations set up for cleaning pens and stuff like that. So, it's not as much an issue around here. But I will say that Noodler's in particular, you're talking about bulletproof, Noodler's Black. The Noodler's inks are cellulose reactive. So what that means is the way they attain their permanence is by bonding to the cellulosic fibers in your paper, which is, if it's made of cotton or wood fiber, that's how it's going to bond. It takes a little longer to bond that way, but it's very permanent. It'll last as long as the paper lasts once it actually gets in there and bonds. So the downside of that is if you have a cotton shirt or anything like that, any wood desk or something, it can also stain that. It's going to bond to those cellulosic fibers just like it would on your paper. In general, though, I think a lot of clothes will have some kind of chemical treatment on them to help resist stains, especially if it's like a dress shirt. As to how well it would do that, I don't really know. So I think the key is going to be if you get a stain on there, try and wash it out as quickly as you can, just with lukewarm water or whatever. And then if you have like a wood desk or something, usually if you have wood, it's going to be treated with some kind of varnish, so it's not going to actually soak into the raw wood. If it does, it's going to stain. I can tell you that right now. But try and get it up as quickly as you can would be the key there. But in general, if you're dealing with a permanent ink, it's going to be permanent on a lot of things that it gets on. So just kind of be careful about that. Next question, Sam F. on Facebook. Which Noodler's blue-black ink would you consider the best, i.e. has the best mix of properties, flows the best, least feathering, etc.? Noodler's 54th, hands down. It's my favorite. Love it. No need to elaborate. Next question I have. This is going to be in the business section. which is only one question this week, but I do get questions from time to time. We now have 29 people in the Goulet Pen Company, so we continue to grow, and we're still hiring for more. So, you know, we are, you know, nowadays, most of the stuff that I deal with day to day is actually related to business and people. And I have a good basis of pen knowledge, which is good because I'm not spending as much time playing with pens as I did way back in the day, because I'm spending time helping everybody else to learn about pens. So I'm doing a lot of teaching, mentoring, you know, that kind of stuff. Having lots of meetings every day, which meetings is kind of a four-letter word for some people, but we're pretty good about the meetings we do around here. Kind of proud of that. So anyway, I do get questions about the way that we run Goulet Pen Company, because it's obviously a big part of the magic that happens around here. So the question, I'm happy to take those questions anytime. Random Task on YouTube asked, I'm glad to hear that your business has been growing. That seems to imply that even as technology advances on tablets and phlablets, large smartphones, never heard that term, and those devices are getting better at recognizing handwriting and acting as virtual notebooks. There's a strong movement to go back to pen and paper and sort of rediscover this medium. As much as I try some of the tablet apps that try to emulate pen and paper, I still keep going back to the real thing. Any thoughts on the general trends that you're seeing on your end? Thanks. Well, that is a phenomenal question, and it's an interesting kind of dichotomy that you have going on with this serious advancement of technology, thanks to the internet especially, and all these apps and things like that. And definitely the mobile device movement is an even more dramatic climb than you had in computing in the 50s, 70s, 80s, whatever. The mobile phone and tablet rise has happened faster than any of the previous computerized devices as far as implementation and widespread acceptance than anything we've ever seen. And so that's obviously something not to be ignored. So what is that going to do to writing things down with a pen and paper? I don't think it's going to hurt really at all. In fact, if the way that my company has come about in the last 5 years is any indication, I think it's actually helping. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but the reason is because fountain pens are so far to the extreme. You know, I think in terms of just regular Bic rollerball pen, you know, ballpoint pens and like that kind of stuff, not the Bic stick, and you know, not picking on Bic at all. But just in general, sorry, I'm getting a little tissue nose situation here. I'm just going to scroll off camera here while I wipe my nose. But in general, I think when you are talking about regular ballpoints and rollerballs and stuff, they are pretty much just a utilitarian object. They don't, excuse me, just trying to be, you know, a gentleman. They don't have a true passion or a following necessarily. I mean, I guess they can for sure, but definitely not the same passion the fountain pen community has for those products. They're much more of a commodity. So I think that the tablet and, you know, voice text and all that kind of stuff is threatening the general, you know, office supply crowd more than anything else with all these apps and devices and stuff that are coming out, because those are all commoditized, and that shift is changing, and you know, you're getting away from certain types of paper and pens and stuff like that. I just saw, I just heard the other day that Staples is buying out Office Depot, and Office Depot had just bought out Office Max not long ago. So these companies are starting to gobble each other up and consolidate and stuff, because I think, you know, the office supply market is taking a hurting. So in general. In fountain pens though, like that's why Goulet, we are like pretty hardcore into fountain pens, because there's a passion around it, and it's really, the fountain pen is a different purpose than a tablet or something like that. And sure, you can have something to emulate handwriting on that, but it's no better than a keyboard on a computer emulating a typewriter. Certainly a typewriter is not practical for most people, but if you really like the feel of a typewriter and the click of those letters, there is no keyboard that you're going to come out with that's going to emulate that, because it just feels different. You know what I mean? Sort of like if you are a cyclist. You know, I'm a cyclist. I like to ride my bike a lot. When I cycle, when I ride outside, even if I'm on the same bike, when I put that bike on a trainer, you know, up in my room when it's cold in the winter, like I have to do right now, it doesn't feel the same as it does riding on the actual road. It's just a different feel, and it doesn't accomplish the same thing. I'm still getting a workout, I'm still doing all that stuff, but it's not the same. And I think that's how it is with fountain pens too, for a couple of reasons. The tactile feel of it. You know, when you're writing with a stylus on a glass pad, it just does not feel the same because there's no feedback like you feel when you're writing on paper. You know, it's very subtle, but there's a reason why you have, you know, a 0.3 micron Mylar paper that you can use to polish up your nib to get it to feel just a little bit different, because that feeling matters to those who are really attuned to it. And so that you'll never get that kind of variant feel with a tablet. It's just not going to happen. You can emulate the end result and the visual kind of aspect of it, but it's the feel, the tactile, the holding the pen in your hand and filling it with ink. And then the ink too is like, gosh, that's the reason we got in. That's the reason I felt passionate about fountain pens in the first place. It was the ink. It actually wasn't the pens. That's kind of a little secret that if you know me well, you know that's how I got into it, was because of the ink. So the ink, there's, geez, close to 600 different colors that we have here at Goulet. And so it's a lot. It's a lot of colors. And you just can't, literally, at least as of right now, maybe technology will catch up, but literally, the color spectrum that you can display on a digital screen is not wide enough to display all the colors that your eyeballs can see. It's just not there. So you can have a similar color, and we have our swab shop online, and it's a really good tool, but it is not the same as seeing the ink in person. That's why we also sell ink samples, right? Boy, I am just on fire today. So I forgot to reformat the card before I put it in the camera, and I filled up the card. So, oh boy. Anyway, so here's part two, I guess. To continue on whatever the heck I was just saying, lost my train of thought completely. The ink color, you just can't see the same thing displayed on a monitor as what you can see in person. So that's just another factor for why I think writing with a fountain pen, yes, it's to write things down, sure, but it accomplishes kind of a different purpose than it would capturing it into a tablet form. So it's just a whole different purpose. At least that's how it is for me. So, and honestly, a lot of the reason I like it is because you get to just unplug and just turn off your digital stuff and stop looking at a screen all day and just actually look at a pen and paper and just kind of go back to a simpler time before we had, you know, 1,500 different ways to message somebody. So that's kind of how I feel about that. Continuing on the rise, at least as far as I'm concerned. All right, now I'm going to get to the troubleshooting section, and I'm getting a little short on time because I'm being long-winded. So I got 6 questions left, and I'm going to see if I can get them all done before my battery dies in the next 16 minutes. Here we go. Aaron R. on Facebook. In an earlier video, you had teased us about you posting a video showing how to clean the ink from the grip section of a Pilot Custom 74. While we're waiting, haha, maybe you can shed some more light on the subject in this week's video. All right, here's the deal. So you called me out. I definitely alluded to it. Got real excited because I figured out how to pull out the grip on my pen. Then I grabbed, and I thought, you know, my pen's 4 years old. Let me see if I can do it on a new pen. And I tried it, and I could not do it on a new pen. I think the piece is glued in place on a new pen, and the glue is just kind of worn off over time on mine, or maybe they didn't used to glue it or something back then. But I could not do it on a new one. And in fact, I actually ruined the grip section in the process. I didn't ruin it. I scratched it to the point where, you know, it wasn't anything that I could sell or anything. So I know I have another Custom 74 because I scratched it. So I got all excited about shooting a video, and then I decided not to do that because I didn't want everybody buying a new Custom 74 to go and scratch it like I did. And believe me, I tried a lot of different things, and I just was not able to get it. So now I have a fine Custom 74, which is kind of cool because I have a medium and now I've got a fine. I chose the smoke. So here's the deal. It can be done, but if you try it on yours, do it at your own risk because it may not be possible. So basically what happens, you get ink that gets in this grip section, and I've got a lot of ink in this grip section. It's nasty. And I might still shoot a video on it. I haven't cleaned it out yet because if I do decide to do a video, I want you to see the 4 years worth of gunk in here. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. First off, what's happening is there's basically an insert that's screwed in, it's threaded in inside the grip of this pen, and it's separated from the outside of the grip. So ink gets caught in between there, and that's what makes it look so weird. So technically, if you take the converter and it's grabbing onto the back of that little insert, if you twist it counterclockwise, then it will actually unscrew that little piece out of there. And then you can see it kind of moving like that. And then if I pull it out, you can see that it actually removes that little piece. Maybe I should zoom in a little bit. Would that be cool? Bam. So you can see what's happening. So this little insert here now comes out, and you can see, oh yeah, oh that's nasty. And that's what's happening. So there's these threads right here that fit in there, and that's what is going on. So you can thread back in there, but it's reverse threaded, which is kind of weird. Okay, so it's normally you have, what is it, righty tighty, lefty loosey, but in this way it's going to be the opposite of that. Okay, so that's one way you can do it, is with the converter on the back of it going counterclockwise. The other way that you can do it is if you pull the nib and feed out, and then you pull the converter out. I actually found that a standard international short cartridge will fit in here quite nicely, and then you can just twist it clockwise and it will pull it out as well. Now this is on my old pen, and so I got all jazzed up about it, and then I tried it on a different pen, and man, I tried everything and I was not able to get it to work. So I'm kind of bummed about that, because I was hoping I could have this great video and then everybody would want a custom 74, because that's like the one thing about this pen that isn't just about perfect. And I really just don't feel comfortable telling everyone about this little trick, even though I kind of just did here, a little explanation, but I really don't want to go pushing it into its own thing, because the potential to hurt your pen is definitely real. So that's my situation there. Next troubleshooting. Anita C on Facebook said, I have a Pilot Metropolitan fine that writes brilliant when freshly inked, but when I leave it for a while, the ink will not flow. Sometimes it helps to prime it, but it almost seems to have gone dry. I'm using the converter it came with. Would I be better to use a Con 50, or is this just a problem with the pen? Con 50 is the clear screw type converter instead of the squeeze one, for those of you not familiar with it. Sorry, I think the cough drops are actually helping, the multiple cough drops in my mouth kind of thing. So I'm just going to keep that going. So pens definitely dry out more in the wintertime, you know, because of the low humidity. So that is a very real possibility. Another thing, I don't know from the context of your question, if you're using the pen, if you're talking about it drying out when you're sitting out, like a lot of times what I see with people who don't use fountain pens a lot, they write with them, they'll sit them down on the desk like they do a rollerball, go away, make coffee, come back, pick it up, and they're like, man, my pen's not writing now. Fountain pen ink is made of water, so if you leave it sitting out like that, especially in a dry, you know, environment, like in the wintertime, that water is just evaporating out off the nib, and there's not a ton, I mean, there's a tiny bit of ink that's coming out of here. It doesn't take a lot to do what it needs to do. So it can dry out in a minute or two, depending on the pen, the design, and the feed, and stuff like that. So in general, if you're not going to be using the pen, even for a minute, it's best to cap it or do something. Or, you know, if it seems to dry out after you left it out for a while, just kind of dip it in a little bit of water, get it going again. That can help. So that's one possibility. Another thing is if the pen doesn't seal up very well when it's capped, then after a couple days, a day or multiple days, it can do the same kind of thing where it dries out a little bit on the nib, has trouble starting, and so on. That could definitely happen with the Metropolitan. It does seal okay, but it's kind of middle of the road. It's not the best, it's not the worst, it's kind of in there. It's not like you can leave it in there for months and it'll start up again. So that could definitely be part of the issue. It could be that after you've been using it for a while that the pen is got like gunk and stuff that's gotten up in the feed, paper fibers, dust, that kind of stuff. So it could be that it needs to be cleaned and just re-inked again. Or it could be that you're out of ink. You know, another thing that you can't tell with that Metropolitan, with that squeeze converter, it's not clear. So you literally could be out of ink and you wouldn't know. Or the ink could be hanging up in the back of that converter and you wouldn't really know it. It's not, I don't know if that happens quite as much, but one trick that you can do if you want to kind of move it along is you don't tap the pen on the page, but if you hold the pen further up in your hand like this, and you tap your hand on the desk with a pretty decent amount of force, you know, like kind of like as if you're knocking on the door for someone. Make sure you're not slamming your tip of your nib into the table, but if you pound it kind of like that, you're going to help to force ink to go down through that pen that can help to get things moving, especially if the converter is causing the ink to hang up in the back. It can force it back down. So those are some of my little pieces of advice there. But one thing that you can kind of test is if you aren't sure if you're getting maybe a full filling on the pen, or if you think that it's drying out and you're not sure how much you have left on there, just keep the bottle of ink handy that you're using, and next time it dries up like that, unscrew the pen and try squeezing the converter like all the way into the open bottle of ink so that it catches all of it, and just see if you do have any ink that's kind of in there, and then you'll know at least if it's an issue with it being empty or not. And hopefully that can help you out, Anita. Next question is from Mary B on Facebook. How do I clean the insides of a translucent pen stained by ink? It's definitely tougher with some inks than others. The specific inks will vary, and so will the pen. Some plastics will be different than others. Usually it's plastic you're dealing with if it's clear. So it depends, you know, and I hate to say that, but that's given the context, that's all I can say. In general, reds, pinks, purples, sometimes blues can stain the most. A lot of blues have, you know, purple or red dyes in them. That's part of what stains it. Cleaning with a pen flush can be a way, or just water with dish soap even can help. Letting it soak for a while maybe can also help in something like that. If you have any pens with aluminum components, you wouldn't want to use a pen flush because most of them are ammonia-based. Ours is ammonia-based. That does not play well with aluminum, so just be aware of that. Physically scrubbing it with a Q-tip can really help sometimes, especially if you got that, you know, a pen flush type situation. So that definitely helps. And then some inks, like Noodler's Bay State inks, actually clean better with bleach and not an ammonia-based solution. So I wouldn't go straight bleach, but maybe like take a household bleach and put like 10% bleach in 90% water, and that can help to speed things along too a little bit. But the bottom line is, if you have a demonstrator pen or a really translucent pen, if you want to change a lot of inks, use a lot of different colors, be ready to clean your pen a lot, because you're just going to see a lot more of what's going on in that pen. Next question is from Jonathan D on Facebook. Did you notice the Lamy 2000 to be a bit drier? I only have used Lamy Black in my pen since I've gotten it. My only other black pen black ink is Noodler's X-Feather. Well, using the X-Feather in my 2000 made cleaning a pain. It'll definitely be a little bit tougher to clean out than the Lamy Black. Lamy Black is a pretty just straight up conventional, not super saturated black. And so it will not be, X-Feather will be a little bit tougher to clean out than that. The permanent qualities of the X-Feather, not necessarily, because it's a cellulose reactive, like I was talking about a few questions earlier. So it reacts more with paper. It's not going to react with the fiberglass and stainless steel that you have going on in your Lamy 2000. But it's a more saturated ink, so there's just more dye and stuff like that to clean out of there. It's also a thicker ink, so you're going to have to clean it a little more thoroughly. You know, and it's a piston filling pen, so it's sorry, just got a quick wipe here. It's a piston filling pen, so it's not going to be quite as easy to clean as maybe some other pens out there, like cartridge converters, where you can use a bulb filler, bulb syringe. Yeah, so I would say try it with the X-Feather, see if that works any better. You know, clean out the Lamy Black, and then try it with the X-Feather, see if that's any better for you. Might flow a little differently. Lamy Black in general is kind of a medium of the road wetness. So maybe it's just you prefer a wetter ink, that's all. All right, Mary B on Facebook said, I have a shiny new Jinhao with a shiny new Noodler's Flex nib installed on it. My first pen tinkering. I'm having no success whatsoever with the flex writing, sorry, though, and wonder whether this is a problem for lefties, such as myself in general, or is it just me? Makes sad face, in parentheses. Thanks for your thoughts. All right, Mary, you got two things going against you here. One is that you're a lefty, and you know, lefties can definitely have a very successful, vibrant fountain pen using career, but flex pens is definitely one of those pens where it's a severe disadvantage to be a lefty, just because when you're trying to flex in a push motion, it just does not work very well. And there's more seldom, does that make sense? I don't know, I'm not a grammarian. But there's fewer opportunities really for you to naturally use a flex pen in a pull motion when you're a lefty, because you're going from left to right, and just only on certain points in your stroke will you be able to actually do a pull motion. So it's definitely just kind of a weird, unique thing to do. A lot of people I know will like severely turn the paper so that they're kind of more pulling instead of pushing. So you might have to really just experiment with some of the ways that you write to see if you can do more of a pull motion with that flex nib than you would otherwise. The other thing that you have going against you here is that you're using a flex nib on a pen that isn't normally made for a flex nib. So you're going to have some flow issues there. You know, Jinhao is a solid pen. It performs pretty well generally, but it's not made to keep up with the flow of a flex nib. It'll fit, sure, it's the same size nib, but it doesn't have a big wide open feed that's supplying a great amount of ink for that flex nib. Those flex nibs require a lot of ink, so when you're flexing it out, you're going to get railroading fairly quick, unless you really slow down, use a really wet, maybe a lubricated ink or something like that. But even then, it's going to be tough, and with your whole left-handed factor too, that's just adding a component to it that just makes it even more complicated. So I would say if you want to really try using flex with regularity, try an actual flex pen, like a Noodler's flex pen. You know, you can get a Ahab or you know, whatever for 20 bucks. Might be worth it to you to try that just to see if that'll work. So that's what I've got for you, but I wish you the best of luck. Got your work cut out for you, Mary. Last question I have is from Ty W on Facebook. What causes skips? My Schaefer 100 writes great, but then suddenly nothing, and then it's fine again. I cleaned out the pen and freshly inked it up, Private Reserve Purple Mojo, and it still occurs. Normally I'm writing on a Rhodia notebook. Could be lots of things. You could be low on ink. Could be over-rotating it in your hand, and then just certain ways that you write, it'll work fine. Could be an improper nib grind like Baby's Bottom. I don't see that as much with the Schaefer, but it can certainly happen with some pens. Could have gunk in the feed or the tines. You know, you could floss it with brass or try cleaning out the pen. You could have ink that's dried up in the pen, and maybe it's just kind of gets it going. You could have an ink compatibility issue where it just isn't flowing as consistently in the pen. So try switching up the inks, you know, cleaning it out. And then other things, it could be ink that's hanging up in the back of the converter, doing that thing where you're tapping it, like I talked about a couple questions earlier, could definitely help you out. There's all kinds of different reasons, but don't give up. Don't give up, okay? Well, that's all I've got for this week. My battery's about to die, so I actually timed that pretty well. So the question of the week for this week, so I tried formatting it, you know, putting things into different categories this week. I also coughed a lot and stopped the video in the middle of it, so the flow was really kind of screwed up. However, I'm curious to know what you thought of this week, and my question of the week is, what, if anything, would you like to see me do differently that could enhance your Q&A watching experience? Whether it's, you know, the length of time, whether it's the way I talk, whether it's the location that I'm in, having guests, having more formatting, having lower thirds, having more pictures, other video to add in. I'm really curious to know. I really want to keep this, I mean, you know, this is the 65th one. I really love the format. I plan on continuing to do Q&A, but I'd like to know what you think I could do to make it better, especially if you have other YouTube shows that you watch and you can recommend anything specific to me and be like, I really like the way that this person does this. That would really help me out a ton. So leave that in the comments on YouTube or on the blog. I'd love to hear it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this Q&A despite all the coughing. And right on. Should leave that cough, Jenny. I'm gonna die. Okay. Goodness.